Hi. It's hot. Hold on. Hopefully the fan doesn't make the audio quality too bad, but no, I don't think that's too bad though, right? I kind of want to put the phone here because you can see the background here, and I think this globe looks oddly cute in the video. I don't know. It just looks warm. It looks homey. Because there's yellow lights there, so it's homey kind of vibe. Anyways, when I was around 5 or 6, I think, I'm not sure how young I was. I just know that I was really little. I was playing around with the older kids in the neighborhood that I grew up at. We were all kind of like relatives, I guess. Like we were all, like if you trace back a few generations, we're all related by blood or something like that. You know, like we're all relatives and we all live in the same neighborhood area. Something like that. And I remember one time when I think it was 2 of the older girls around the neighborhood. I'll just be calling them F and M because their name starts with an F and an M. So F and M. They're kind of like a duo. Like they're like besties kind of thing, you know. And I remember as a child, I always thought that those older sisters are so cool. Like, I just genuinely think they're super cool. And really pretty too. So I really look up to them no matter what. Like, it really doesn't matter what they do, I just always look up to them. But then there was this one occasion where I was learning how to ride a bike. It wasn't like a 2-wheel bike either. It was a 3-wheel bike where there's 1 wheel at the front and then there's 2 wheels at the back, like a pair, like this, right? Because usually kids start with that. So I naturally also started with that too. And I was really scared at first. It was really scary. It was really scary. Riding a bike is super scary. And learning to ride one at that time felt like the end of the world for little me. And these 2 older sisters around my house were really kind enough to offer to, I guess, teach me how to ride the bike, right? And I remember if this is my house, next to my house there's kind of like a bit of like a long type of pavement concrete road space that you can, like a child can ride a bike in a straight line from. So me and F and M were there, the 3 of us, and then F, she just like put me on the bicycle, right? And she was like, go on, you can do it. We'll be here and we'll catch you if you fall, right? So I just tried to keep going. And then halfway through, I was feeling pretty confident. Like, I was still scared, of course, but I started feeling more confident because, well, I went halfway through it already. So I was like, it'll be fine, I suppose. But then halfway through, there was a centipede. It was like a medium-sized centipede. It wasn't huge. It wasn't tiny and small. It was decent enough size for you to recognize it, but it's not big enough, apparently, for people to feel empathy for it. Because apparently the smaller something is, the less empathy we have for it. So I stopped my bicycle and I was really scared because I didn't want to crush over it. And the devastating part for me even looking back, I still think that it's devastating. Is that how, like, I guess like a quarter to three of this centipede's body was already crushed by, I don't know, like maybe some kid were running around, because this is like a public area where so many kids also run around when we play tag and everything, right? So it's understandable. Maybe some people didn't see and stepped on it. Maybe it was a dog that stepped on it, a cat. It could be anything really. So I don't know like what harmed it, and it was clearly struggling trying to stay alive because the rest of its legs, and you know how centipedes have like a bunch of legs. I don't know how much they have in numbers, but I just know they have so much, right? And all of those tiny little legs that it have was just trying to like strive forward to like push its body despite like a quarter of it being crushed already. It still really struggled trying to, I guess, escape my bike because my tire was like right in front of it or something. So I guess in a way it could also feel the danger lurking beside it, and it did not want to be crushed, so it was just scrambling trying to get away. And then to my surprise, like okay, only just the fact that like a quarter of its body got crushed was already sad for me at that time, and it's still sad for me now too, so what's new? But to my surprise, F, the older sister that told me I'll be there to catch you when you fall, I always love and respect her, but to my surprise she said just crush it, and I was really confused. So I just turned back to her and I asked, why? Why do you want me to crush it? And for me at that time, and honestly until now, I didn't immediately label her as a bad person. I still don't label her as a bad person though. It's just, I was confused and I was shocked. So I turned back to her and asked her, why? Why do you want me to crush it? Why do you tell me to crush it? And then she said, it's clearly struggling to be alive and it's not going to make it very far. It's just a matter of time until it dies, because like almost half of its body is already crushed. It can't survive after this. It's going to die eventually. So just quickly end its pain. And I was really surprised by this new perspective that I just got introduced to. I remember I don't think I followed through her advice because she wasn't forcing me or anything. She was just telling me to do it. But she wasn't like the type to, force me to do it if she tells me to do it and I'm like, no. Mostly because also another older sister, which is M, was also there, and she's more on the, I guess, softer side, like less pushy side. So she told me like, Ploy, if you don't want to do it, then that's fine. Like if you don't agree with her, then that's fine. And then she just told F like, don't push the child. She's still too young to understand these things, and I didn't understand when M said that. I was grateful, of course, that she stood up for me and like told me I don't have to do anything I don't want to, which in turn made me just move my tire and just let the centipede be. However, I guess it was still a little strange for me because M did say she's too young to understand this, and at that time I didn't understand what she meant by that. It just felt like a weird concept to me, that it just made me think as a child, oh, does that mean that in the next 10 years when I grow up to be like their age, I'm going to understand why it is justified to end a centipede struggling to be alive's life. Would I ever understand that? Now I am even older than those older sisters at that time. And I can absolutely say I still don't have the answer, but that in itself is an answer because I feel like no one will ever have a valid answer for this, you know, the right to live. So that was probably the first time as a child that I started questioning what is the right for someone to live? How does one earn a life? Like, how does one earn the, I guess, quality to have a life? Like, how does one earn a right to have a life? Right, a right. How does one earn a right to live? Another thing is that other than this centipede occasion thing, there was also more incidents that made me think about this a lot as a child. Another of the incidents is I was a little bit older than the centipede incident, I think. And since I didn't have a phone as a child, and I think a lot of kids are like that. A lot of us don't have a phone as a child, like as that young, you know. So whenever I wanted to watch anything on the internet, I would have to ask for my parents' permission, so they know what I'm like browsing on the internet. You know, make sure I'm not just like browsing some weird website. And I think that's a great thing because I'm also a pretty sensitive child. So if I don't know, accidentally, which unfortunately I still, even after all those like internet regulations, I still stumbled upon a lot of things that triggered my OCD as a child, specifically intrusive thoughts. But pushing that story aside for another time, I don't know how it happened, but I remember asking my mom if I can watch a YouTube, like a news, I think it's like a news video, and that news video is about, what do you call it, like a death, giving a death sentence to a criminal. Yeah, like a criminal getting a death sentence, right? And I wanted to watch the news that, a video that they made news about that thing, like, you know, giving death sentence to the criminal, to the prisoner. Mostly, now that I think about it, I probably asked to watch about that because when I was younger, my family had this sort of thing where we would read bedtime stories before sleeping, and there was this one book. It was like a series. It's a Thai classic literature book that we read. In Thai, the name is called เมื่อคุณตาคุณยายยังเด็ก which translates to when my grandpa and grandma were children. That's the literal translation of the name of the series. So we would read those short little stories in the book before bed. And I remember there was one time my dad skipped a chapter, and since I was confused, he didn't tell me at first why he skipped the chapter. So I asked him, Dad, why did you skip a chapter? I'm pretty sure you skipped a chapter. Why did you skip that chapter? And then he said, oh, I think it's a little bit too much for you right now. You're still too young. And I asked him, can I at least like know the name of the chapter, like the topic of the chapter? Because every chapter has a different topic, right? And so my dad told me, well, the topic is about death penalty, like a death penalty given to criminals. and it kind of gives you a bit of a vivid graphic detail of how they execute these criminals based on their death penalty. And he said, I don't think you want to hear about that, no? And I said, yeah, I don't want to. That's scary, right? That's scary. Why would I want to hear about that? But I did feel interested though. I was really interested because to me, I wasn't exactly interested in like the execution part. I thought that was really scary. I didn't really want to think too much about death because as a child with OCD and already struggling with a lot of intrusive thoughts, a lot of my intrusive thoughts were already about life and death and just, safety, harm, all of that. So I didn't want to get triggered, even though I didn't know what I had back then. I still didn't want to. I still felt it instantly that these things would trigger me, so I just kind of avoid them. But the part that I was interested in, however, is that I never knew the right to live could ever be taken away. And by the law, and justified at that. And this entire, I guess, perspective around life, like, how the law can rightfully sentence someone's life to end. What the hell? That's my iPad. Wait 1 second though. My alarm is ringing. I need to stop using such weird alarms sounds. I think is this a cow? Probably a cow sound. It sounds so constipated though. I'm a weirdo, but I'm real though. Okay. Anyway, so putting this back here. I have to go out in like 15 minutes, so I probably should wrap this up soon. But we all know that's impossible because I don't like wrapping anything up. I stretch everything out. Anyways, so I need to catch my breath. I'm tired. Okay, so it made me that entire situation about death penalties and everything made me think about the centipede incident all over again, because this was after the centipede accident for like a few years. So I thought about the centipede incident all over again, and then I thought, humans are probably the only species that I know of that have like death penalties or, judging whether or not someone has the right to live or to die. I've never heard it in any other species, but I would love to know if there are any other species that, functions like this. I'm guessing that if there were going to be any, it would be some sort of maybe chimpanzee or apes or mammals that are kind of close to the human species tree. But then I might be wrong because nature is very vast and there's so much variety, so you will never know. It might exist, like this system might exist somewhere in other species as well. But so far, since I only know about its existence in humanity, it's just really interesting to me. And it leaves me with a lot of questions, how do we determine the right for another human being or just another living being in general, whether it has the right to live or to die. And it's not that I think death penalties are wrong. I just think it's interesting how we as humans have such a complex sense of moral that we could form laws and just moral codes in general that justifies taking fate other lives' fate in our own hand. I think that is interesting. It's interesting to think about. What is the rule? What is the qualification to end a living being's life? I think this is the sort of question that reflects into so many things in society. I mean, that sounds like a question that you could ask both a serial killer, a butcher, a doctor, a soldier, a scientist. As a matter of fact, it's the type of question that I think every profession has to question at one point. Even when that profession doesn't seemingly have any connection to do with life and death, I still think it's the type of question that is fundamental for almost every sort of thing in this world. Because life and death is the beginning and the end of every living thing. So it's kind of essential that, we question things about life and death the most. It's a myth. It's a myth, really. And it's super contradicting too, because some people would argue that every living thing has the right to live and to be alive right after it is born, and it exists. Like, as long as it exists and it's here and it's alive, it has a right to live. Then I guess some people would also argue that it also depends on whether that thing has a consciousness or not, and what level of consciousness does it have, right? Things like that. It also leads to other things like abortion, or giving death penalties to criminals or prisoners, or putting down a stray dog or a stray cat, or putting down a patient that wants to, what do you call it, I forgot what like the official name for it is, but putting down a patient by their will because they don't want to suffer anymore and they have like a chronic illness or something like that. I think this is like the type of question that is the root of so many morally ambiguous and almost controversial topics in humanity, And I don't think there is any right or wrong. I think there is a right or wrong, though, actually. There is a right or wrong, but however, right or wrong isn't something that can be made into a shape. It's not a solid concept or material that you can physically see. it's right or wrong, I think it does exist, but somehow it's also kind of like a concept in our heads. um, and I think in nature there's, I think right or wrong coexists with nothing being right or wrong. Oh, I think morality coexists with life in general. I just think morality coexists with humans, and it's not like, I don't know, this is confusing. I don't know how to explain my thoughts. But it's fine. This is what the video is for the sake of me explaining myself. Even though I won't be able to explain it realistically or logically or vividly like how other people expect me to. The main part is that I get to express it out. And whether it makes sense to other people or not, that's another fish to fry. So, yeah, I think it's an interesting concept, isn't it? I mean, if we go by the, I think if we were to put it on like opposite end of spectrums, the furthest left side of the spectrum would be every living being, once it exists in the materialistic, in the physical world, in the physical realm, it has every right to live equally, just like other living beings. However, I think on the other end of the spectrum would argue that a lot of factors have to be included in order to justify whether or not the living being should still have the right to live. I think that is one of the things that make topics on abortion something that a lot of people still think is morally wrong. And as much as I think morality is just something that it's like a concept in humans' head, But unfortunately, all of us live in there. All of us have a head. So it's not like it's something that we can just ignore just because it's all in our head. Because we also live in our head. Just like mental health, like depression, like it's all in your head. Well, yeah, no shit, but I'm also in there. So it's like, like you don't ignore something just because it's in your head. And you don't ignore a concept just because it's something that humans created in our heads, right? So at least that's how I would go about things. However, if I were to use my morals, which is not perfect, and again, it's in my head. It's all in my head. But all of our morals are all in our heads anyway, so it's fine, right? Oh, but I guess some of the morals would already be written down as the law. So that wouldn't be in our head anymore. That would be on the paperwork, on the document, on whatever file the government has. But still, you get what I mean. I think that the right for a life to live depends on many factors. Many factors. First of all, I think one of the first factors I can think of at the top of my head right now is consciousness. You see, if it is a matter of debate about like whether a human deserves to have a right to live, that would be, in my humble opinion, an easier debate than an animal. Because unfortunately, I don't think I've ever heard of humans being super passionate about, discovering whether or not animals, like other animal species, have a consciousness level that can rival ours in a way. I don't think I've ever heard of anyone being super passionate about knowing that. And if there's someone out there who was or is passionate about that topic, then they're clearly not getting enough attention because I haven't heard about them yet. And I would love to if anyone can tell me. But since I have not heard of them yet, I'm just gonna assume it's not like the most interesting topic that humans look into, which naturally I think would lead to most of us like minusing the point where we don't know if like I don't know if the information about other species cognitive functions being like rivaling ours. I don't know if that sort of information exists already or not, if it has been discovered, if it has been researched about, studied about or not. But I think it is undeniable that most of us, a lot of us, don't know or sometimes don't even care about other species' consciousness and how they observe life and how they know that they exist. Which means if we're going to use consciousness, like levels of consciousness or levels of cognitive functions, to just like as one of the factors to justify whether or not something should get the right to live, it would naturally be easier to justify whether a human life should live or not than an animal life, no? Because we don't know how other animals and other species' consciousness works, and no one, I haven't heard of anyone being bothered enough to, study it for sure if some other animal species, especially the ones that are most commonly abused by human, like animals that are oftenly used in the meat industry, which would naturally make them just absolutely food stock and subjected to abuse and murder. Oh no, wait, do you call it murder? And just, being killed at the end of its life to be turned into meat. And then humans consume them, right? So it's kind of, no one has, how do you justify and think about for maybe like a pig's consciousness or a chicken's consciousness? I don't think most people would care about it as much as a human's consciousness. However, I think it should be more cared about though. And I would love to study about it more. I would love to, invest my time into getting to understand their consciousness more. However, since I'm talking about the general public, I suppose, yeah, most people would, I still think it would be easier to think about humans when it comes to using consciousness to justify whether something deserves to live. But consciousness isn't the only factor. It can't be the only factor That's too easy. And that leaves too many plot holes, doesn't it? Um, so I think consciousness is one thing that we can use to judge. Another thing is the effect that the living being would cause to others. Whether or not it is how heavy is that impact, and is it heavy in a way that is mostly impacts others in a harmful way, or does it impact others in might be heavy, might be much, but not in a harmful way, and even potentially in a good way as well. I think that is exactly why, for me at least, just using the first what do you call it, qualification. I forgot the word again. I keep forgetting words whenever I'm trying to say something. Condition, whatever, you know. So it's like if we use that, if we use consciousness to justify, then like only just using this, like just consciousness alone, I already think that abortion is something that should be made legal, and should be like a standard healthcare for people. Reason why is because a baby, or even what we would call a fetus, like if unborn, then I'm not sure what like the scientific term for that would be. Maybe like the fetus. I don't know if fetus is even like a scientific name. Okay, I've heard people using it, but I do not know if it is a scientific like term or not. And one thing I've seen is that a lot of people that supports pro-choice and feminism, I see a lot of people undermining the value and the existence of a fetus because it is unborn and it is still in the womb. However, as someone who also supports pro-choice, and also a feminist, and I also support women's rights, I think, for me at least, I support female anatomies and just women's right in general, but I don't think I have to undermine a fetus's value as well. Like, personally, if it's my way of thinking about things, is that if a fetus genuinely has no value in life at all and could just be discarded like a piece of meat, then there wouldn't be moms or women grieving and, falling into depression because they lost their baby during pregnancy. That wouldn't be a thing if fetuses genuinely don't hold any value. I don't think they should be viewed as a piece of meat. However, though, I don't think the weight of their life should outweigh the entire future that is waiting for a girl or a woman. The weight of life that everything has is undeniably, it undeniably exists for every living being. However, I think that weight can differ. I think that weight, it can scale. Like, it's, you might not be able to scale it or put a number on it, But I feel like, just as a human, at least for me, with a moral code that is all in my head, I can kind of feel like the difference in heaviness a little bit, at least in my head. And to me, I still think that a girl who in a lot of cases did not choose to get pregnant could be assault, she could have been raped, or she, could have been coerced, manipulated. There's so many reasons for why a girl would want an abortion and why that would be best for her and the baby or fetus in her womb, no matter how many months old or weeks. Like, no matter how many weeks old, So yeah. Life, death. I wonder what justifies us to take away the right to live. I think some things are justified, at least from the morals in my head. Some things are justified. However, I don't think any life should ever be undermined. Even a life of a vile criminal that I would consider a monster. And I would not hesitate to support a death penalty on them because I do not want them to live. I still think even the vilest of monsters and criminals walking Earth in the form of human, even their life, even their vile life, still has a weight. It just depends on what caused that weight, how that weight affects others, how the presence of that life affects the presence of others. Yeah, I should go. It's been 40 minutes. I need water. My throat is dry. It hurts. You will never get anything from my yap videos. You'll never. Just give up, okay? You will never get anything essential from it. Not like useful information or scientific research or any of that. No statistics, no backup, nothing. Just, this is just me. I don't even have a script. And most of the time, I forget what I wanted to say and the right word to use in saying them. But that's the point. So, yeah. Bye. Good day, mate. I hope you give yourself the very happy right to be alive. Boy.